What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bituation Room. I'm your host, Francesca Fiorentini, coming to you in a sort of like 90s hostage tape situation as I have made my way to the Bay Area. I have made my way because tomorrow night I will be live with Matt Lieb at Cobb's Comedy. We've brought our child. She's going to be doing a Hot 3. There's some like real cringe stuff. There's just like kind of, you know, first year comics in there. So very excited to see everybody in San Francisco tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Cobb's Comedy. Get your tickets. Also, it's a hostage video because my microphone has been duct taped to the stand. So I want you to sort of this is the level of my mental state is at. Also, the sort of state of the country. But that's my mental state right now. Didn't get a lot of sleep and, have duct tape the microphone to the stand. Everything's fine. We've got a great show. We're still doing the damn thing. We are not going to be doing a Wednesday or a Friday show this week. Let me live, people, okay? Let me get off my back about it. No, on Thursday, I'll probably be like, I really want to talk about some brand new crap that happened. But no, tomorrow and Friday, we will not be doing a show. But again, if you're like, I want more show, become a patron. Patreon.com/bituationroom. $10 gets you that shout out. We only have one person to shout out today, but like it's going to be, I'm just going to say your name throughout the entire fart song. So unless someone decides to upgrade or become a patron, because you get all of that sweet bonus material that we did last week. Don't ask me what we covered. I forget because the news is moving too fast. We have the host of the Financial Diet YouTube series, Chelsea Fagan. That is a special request by one of our patrones. Oh, I'm sorry. A little bit of a perk when you become a patron is you say, I would like this mashup, and then I procure it for you. We're going to talk to her, obviously, about what the tariffs insanity means for our everyday lives, thoughts about our own financial diet and health, and if it's anything like my diet lately, honestly, it's bad. We're also going to be joined by comedian John Hastings, and we're going to be talking about the reverse Trump effect has struck once again a Commonwealth nation, one of the countries that I might possibly seek refuge in the not too distant future. We're going to talk about the Australian elections. We're also going to be talking about a new idea dropped to just relive, I don't know, the action sequence that plays out in an 11-year-old kid's mind, as he's just like going like, and then Steven Seagal's like, and then Alcatraz, and he escaped from the Alcatraz. We're talking about reopening Alcatraz because that is what our dumb as rocks president wants to do. We're also going to talk about reinvigorating Hollywood. Donald Trump has got some answers, and so does John Voight. So if you're here, like and share the stream right now. What are you doing? Give me and my the duct tape, which let's hope it falls off. So it could just be some, some action sequence. Oh, and then the duct tape fell off and it escaped from Alcatraz. Give me some love. Send in some super chats. Like and share the stream. I already said that. Become a patron. You get discounts on our merchandise, 20% off. And make sure also that you know that in Los Angeles, we're going to be doing a show on May 30th, Friday at the Elysian Theater. It's going to be so good. We're solving LA, people. We're going to solve Hollywood. We're going to solve the fire so there's no more of them. We're going to solve the homelessness and housing crisis. John Idarola, council member Eunices Hernandez, Rachel Reyes of the LA Podcast, and Matt Lieb will be joining me. And I hope you will too. Tickets at the Elysian Theater, or francescafiorentini.com, or wherever you're listening or watching this. I think that is it for my announcements. And we have to get into some pretty depressing news. So everybody, get your bitch caps on. And this is What Are You Bitching About? In addition, obviously, to everyday regular things like, I don't know, obliterating occupational safety and hazard administration, which just happened under Trump. In addition to the fact that FEMA is no longer going to be operating, to the point where Sarah Huckabee Sanders is like, please, I'm a Republican. Arkansas, 40 people dead. And then, again, this is a few weeks old, but FEMA is like, no, not going to be a thing anymore. OSHA, not going to be a thing anymore. This is the populist president. Another FU to the working class, but somehow people still believe he might be good on one thing if you don't look at it too hard. The point is, more of a maybe my brain is not correctly functioning. More to the point, something that is taken an extreme right turn, or maybe was always heading that way, is the situation in Gaza right now. And I'm bitching about the fact that Israel has now said they're going to take over Gaza. Now, I know what some people are wondering. I thought Israel already took over Gaza. It was effectively an open-air prison since 2007, blockaded by land, sea, air. We all know in 2010, the first Freedom Flotilla attempted to break through this blockade that was put on the people of Gaza, starving them, depriving them of medicine. 10 people were killed from that blockade. And again, just drone striked the other day, another blockade attempting to break it. And then October 7th happened. And you still have the AP reporting things like the war started on October 7th. The war didn't start on October 7th, my people. The war started in 1948, okay? The war started as more and more land has been colonized by Israel, and now out and out just desiring Gaza back and truly doing what Trump and Netanyahu have talked about, which is turning Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. Netanyahu doesn't use the term. He's more religious with it or whatever he needs to do to appeal to his psycho base. But over the weekend on Saturday, it seems like there is no more, we're getting rid of Hamas. We're making sure that Gaza can be free without the, control of Hamas, which was always a fig leaf. Because ultimately, getting rid of Hamas when you don't actually distinguish who's a militant, who's not, you don't care. It's okay to kill 60 civilians to get one alleged militant. It's all been a fig leaf. It's all been a lie. It's all been a cover for this genocide. About 2,500 people have been killed in Gaza just since the end of the unilaterally, the ceasefire ended in early March. No food or aid has gotten in since that time. People are starving. And now it's like, okay, we are going to surround folks. And we've seen these images, y'all, and march them out of their homes. If we can't kill them, if we can't starve them, if they don't die, we're going to ethnically cleanse them. We're going to take it over. And none of this is like, so, we're going to facilitate new elections. No. No, this is full-blown fascism. This is full-blown Palestinians don't exist. They are not people. We're going to be there for a really long time. How long? We don't know. Until the international community can't do shit about it. Not that it ever did, right? It tries. But again, with the United States, with Biden, with Trump at Israel's back, what have they got to lose, right? Now people are being persecuted, repressed, imprisoned for simply words, for op-eds. They've won. And so, and what did they win? Again, not a war. They have won their colony, the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, the never again that actually is happening in Gaza. And I'm, again, TikTok, still waiting. I'm waiting for the libs. I'm waiting for the universities. I'm waiting for the people who were like, I hate Netanyahu, but what are you going to do about it? Well, I mean, something had to be, and Hamas, the tunnels. Like, I'm waiting for not only people to change their minds, say sorry, but stand the fuck up. And this is what it is, y'all. And I include the Democratic Party. And so I'm still also waiting on an actual apology and an actual mea culpa from leading Democrats, AOC included, on, look, The Biden administration, including Kamala Harris, were never working on a ceasefire. They're completely hook, line, and sinker along for the ride for the genocide, and they never cared. So guess what? We need to make a break with them. AIPAC is not good for our party. They're not good for our country. Our alliance and allegiance with Israel is not good. And until then, I don't know. Until then, I think this party is doomed, to be honest with you. So look, if it takes Trump to get Democrats to wake up a little bit, good. But I'm bitching about this because it's what we all knew was going to happen, right? It's the extremists. It's, if you watch Louis Theroux's The Settlers, which you should, this was always the way it was going to go unless we could stand up against it. And people have, and they still are. And it is always well worth it, because it's not going anywhere. But I'm just saying, like, stop pretending that this is not what Israel wanted to do the entire time. Anywho, let me just hit the mic a little bit more. Yes, like a real professional. I have a seamless ad read to do because I am a mom, and part of the reason my brain is broke is because I didn't get a lot of sleep. I forgot my Sunset Lake CBD gummies. And also I was sleeping in the same room as my child, and she's a very much like close the door, turn off all the lights, sleep by yourself kind of baby. And that was not the case because we're traveling, and it was rough. It was just, let's just say it was like 4 hours of sleep before Matt started snoring really, really loud. The point is this: it's Mother's Day weekend. Sunday, I better get gold bars, diamonds and gold bars. But if you want to get something a little more affordable, treat the moms in your life to something sweet, sensible, and full of CBD. That is right. Now through May 11th, get 30% off all CBD gummies when you use the code MOM25, whether you're shopping with her or for her, or your mom wants to get a little buzzy buzz, you want to have fun. They also have like Delta 9 gummies. They also have a little vibe gummies that have a little bit of THC. SunsetLakeCBD.com, coupon code MOM25 for 30% off all your CBD gummies. And another thing moms don't like to do is cook on Mother's Day, and or be the person who's like, hey, have you eaten? I hate being that person. Have you eaten? It's 4 p.m. Have you eaten lunch? And that is why instead of just like eating really, really late, I've been enjoying Factor meals. That's right. Factor meals. I just had a smoked almond and tofu stir fry. I was trying to remember what it was called. So good. I like all their vegetarian stuff. Super flavorful, better than I can make vegetarian food, honestly. And you get 50% off your first box. Factormeals.com/Bituation50 off. Use coupon code Bituation50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping off your first box. Again, Bituation50 off. Factormeals.com/Bituation50 off. 50% off plus free shipping. I feel like I just had too many CBD gummies reading that Factor ad, but trust me, they're good. They're like surprisingly flavorful. You're like, oh, damn, this is good. And it's easy, microwaved, fresh, and never frozen, which I love. Also, really good smoothies and really good snacks. Anyway, check them out. What are you waiting for? And now it is Tuesday. I want to talk about this with him. I'm really, really excited to have him on the show. We met at a mutual friend, Will Weldon's live podcast, I Hate Bill Maher, which everyone should be listening to. But he has been on pretty much every major comedy festival, including Edinburgh from 2012 to 2019, Melbourne, Just for Laughs Montreal. He was most recently on America's Got Talent, and he's put out 8 specials in 10 months, which you can stream right now, not later, in a bit. Please welcome John Hastings.
Hello. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay. Really good to have you. I was like, I just loved being on this show with you.
It was so fun. Will has come upon the best idea for a podcast ever because no one doesn't hate Bill Maher. Like everyone will be like, yeah, that guy stinks. It's a fascinating thing as as we're moving it through the post Mar going to dinner at the White House
Oh
time,
God.
which is everyone isn't going, oh, I do hate that guy. Everyone's realizing, oh, you hate him too. I'm really enjoying it. Also, sidebar, Trump's now sending invites out to a bunch of different comedians to try and get them to
Oh
come
my
to
God.
dinner.
Oh my God. No, but he's made the rounds to get like, I don't know the names of all these podcasts, but like the dude with a mustache who was called out by Kendrick Lamar. Um
I mean, that
like
could be so many people. This is the great. The world is cooked. But let's
I
just
don't
talk about
care.
how fun culture is. That you could say
Andrew
the
Schultz. He was at Andrew Schultz's podcast.
Oh my god! And that show is it's like the View for the demented. It's like if four DJs from 2009 started the View. Like this is the weird thing about podcasting
Do you
now is
hate watch? Because I know you hate watch some of
oh
Bill Maher's podcast, but do you hate watch other podcasts?
I certainly do. So this is very my best friend died in 2022 and I
Oh God, I'm
couldn't
sorry.
absorb culture. Like I was so sad. So the only thing that I got into was like wait a minute, what's happened to the world? Like I was moving from the UK to the US and I was getting married and then getting divorced and I just sort of skipped after like years and years of being a very politically aware person. I just didn't pay attention
Yeah.
like through COVID to anything and then kind of came out of it and was like, wait a minute, the guys from the Guy Code are now deciding foreign policy?
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
the
Everyone's
what?
lost their minds. Yeah,
It's
because while you were going through like real shit, everyone else was like absolutely losing their goddamn minds over nothing when they should have been more focused on like keeping each other safe, surviving COVID, the economy, unarmed black people being murdered. And then they were like, nah, I'm going to talk about masks and vaccines.
it's a very interesting thing because what has happened to show business is this very large kind of in 2018 or 2019, the New York Times did this amazing sort of expose podcast called The Rabbit Hole that talked about algorithm control of the masses. And they made the point that YouTube changed how their algorithm was conditioned, but they didn't change it for hosts. And then what happened was a bunch of comedians who always said, I should be bigger, got an opportunity to have an audience that made them seem like they were as big as they always felt like they deserved to be. But
Right.
because they were unaware that you're going to chase this audience wherever they go. It hits COVID. That audience, you react to the most extreme. So is some of them grift, some of them maybe genuinely believe it, and it's this sort of feeding outsider thing. And now it's become this to be a quote unquote cool comedian. You have like a set of ideologies. Like, am I like? I don't know about
Which was so
you.
funny because that was, oh, wait, I mean, finish your thought, but it's so funny because it's like, that was always, it's always frowned upon to like be a political comic, even though everyone's like, oh, I love George Carlin. Now let me do an hour about my dick. Like nobody actually does a George Carlin. And it really is about like, yeah, it's, you know what it is, John? It's cool to be, although it's fading really quick, but it's cool to be a right winger. Like it's cool to be like, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna say the R word, which is like, there's nothing less cool than saying the R word, but
So it's this they're the outsider culture. Outsider culture changed. Like I'm a 39-year-old elder millennial. Like outsider culture to me is not outsider culture to Gen Z because to them they look at us like, oh, these were these guys drinking PBR and saying what words we could use, and it's like, now, but you don't understand the context of we had just gone through 10 years of the 2000s where things were so nuts and like they were
yeah.
declaring wars that we were just
Yes.
like the reason why we were hanging out in those weird gentrifying areas is we couldn't afford anything because there was a giant housing crash, but we were able to kind
Yes.
of like, and there's none
And
of that.
also like 10 years of like the Democratic Party slowly, embracing how far right they had moved, and the election of Barack Obama I think has a lot to do with like, again, the backlash to people of color being existing. And I don't know, there's just a lot to say about, yeah, like the like post race analysis coupled with like neoliberal Democrats not doing fuck all to help people, then kind of made it cool to be like a white racist dipshit. But we do have to move on, and this is broadly, I love talking to comics about broadly what's happening in our world. But is there something more focused, John, that you are talking about, you are bitching about?
I can't stop bitching about local LA municipal politics. Like I feel I have never felt more like my mom in my entire life. Like I am one step away from getting a thick book about economics and a little backpack and going to school board meetings. Like I just like Karen Bass is literally announcing that they're a year ahead of schedule in the Palisades, and you can't find an article about the rebuild in Altadena. Like it's just like it's to your point of what you were just saying about
Mm-hmm.
Barack Obama. It's this extreme, like this the David Graeber. That's right, guys. He's quoting an anarchist. David, I
Oh my boy, we were friends.
no way.
Yeah, we organized together.
Uh,
R.I.P.
I found like I found his lectures online deep in COVID, and then I ended up reading Debt. Like, do you know how weird it is to be reading a book by David Graeber? Listen to an audiobook by David Graeber while going around the country losing money doing stand-up comedy. I'm like, I feel like I'm living this book, David.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Did you ever meet him?
I never met him. No,
Because you lived in the UK. I mean, where was he? I thought he was there, but sorry. What were you going to quote him? What quote were you going to?
He made this amazing point about Barack Obama, Macron. Karen Bass definitely falls into it, that they're the extreme center.
Yeah.
It's the very like it's the embrace of bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake, and nothing is done. And it's what drives me crazy is these people get painted as progressive politicians or left-wing politicians, and they have nothing to do with any of those ideologies. And then it allows people to ignore those policies, and we're going to get a LA mayoral race that will be Rick Caruso will be the moderate choice, and then it's probably going to be Nicole Ann Shanahan from RFK's campaign.
Oh God, yeah.
And it's just what are we doing? They need to actually someone needs to come forward and go, make me the mayor, and we're going to reform the city government and get rid of this board of supervisors. We're going to actually run it like they do it in New York. There's going to be borough mayors reporting to a central mayor, and we're actually going to get something done.
That makes so much sense, because the municipal politics and what it constitutes LA City versus LA County, and then if you get a ticket in Culver City, you've got to call some crazy random service that are we service Flagstaff, Arizona, Culver City, and you're like, what is this place? I totally, as someone who's not from LA, I'm like, how does any of this fucking function?
It's the craziest thing, because it's also I lived in the United Kingdom, which it does shadowy weird bureaucracy to the point that you're like, what? Why am I going to this library to give you £8 so I get some stamps so I can give someone that so they can park on my street? And they're like, look, it's called socialist democracy, and we kind of fucked it, but we're still trying, and this is the last thing that's left, so do it. And you're like, okay, it doesn't make any sense. In LA, I live next to Glendale. I have to keep quarters in my car because Glendale, the parking meters still only take coins, because I swear to God, there's some guy, the mayor of Glendale's cousin gets a kickback because he has a nickel mine or something. It's
I love that this actually all just comes back to you trying to park and be like, fuck, I don't have quarters. What year is it? It's 2025.
I want to go to the nice post office in Glendale, Francesca, and I'm forced to go to a terrible one in Eagle Rock.
First of all, don't talk shit without doxing myself. But no, look, guys, we have to get into a bunch of stuff. A lot of things happened this week, but only two in my book, in our book, we're going to dig into with John here. This is the week where. Let's start off with this. So this was the week where the Trump effect, which has always been used to refer to Donald Trump emboldening some, pissy authoritarian Duterte, Modi, just again, the global podcast bros of, fascists. But now people are using the Trump effect to say, nah, everything you touch turns to dust, and elections are not going the way of the strongman, the anti-woke, the fake news bullies, the ethno-nationalists. Now, actually, people are like, no, we like the liberal democracy. Remember that? And specifically in other English-speaking, former English colony here, but in the Commonwealth of the Commonwealth of the United Kingdom. and that is in Australia, where for the first time in 20 years, which is insane, a prime minister was reelected.
Yeah.
Anthony Albanese of, or do people say Albanese? Albanese of the Labour Party was reelected, beat out Peter Dutton of the, I'm assuming, the Conservatives.
Oh no, it's confusingly called the Liberal or Coalition with the National Party. The Liberal National Coalition. Nothing sounds more terrifyingly right-wing than the Liberal National Coalition. Get a gas mask, everybody.
I don't want any national. I don't like the word, the National Coalition. But anyway, it kind of went down similarly. And I can think big reveal here that John is Canadian. And hello. And it kind of went down similarly to the election in Canada not so long ago, except for I believe that Australia has ranked choice voting, which I love and is fascinating. And Dutton of the Liberal National Party lost, like Canada, lost his own effing seat. Like Pierre Poilievre lost his seat in the parliament. Dutton represented Queensland. And similarly, also, the left kind of collapsed. Like the Green Party did really poorly. They lost some seats in Australia. But it's kind of amazing that this is happening sort of writ large, because Australia was drifting right for a while.
Yeah, what I find the most fascinating, especially if you compare the Canadian election and the Australian election, when you look at it from the perspective of the collapse of the left, is in Canada, it's terrifying. The left migrated to the Conservative Party, which basically says in Canada, those weren't necessarily politically active people. They were people that associated with the outsider party.
Yeah.
And the right wing in Canada now has the outsider image, which is horrific. While in
Yeah.
Australia, what you have is you had basically a wipeout of old school right wing politics in Australia. Peter Dutton was the last vestige of sort of the Bush era right wing in that country. The thing that they're not talking about is he was so unpopular as a guy going into this election. The last two prime ministers who got thrown out, like one of them got thrown out because he was ordering the Navy to shoot at migrants in boats, had a higher popularity rating than Peter Dutton had going into this election. But the party had a larger poll, and basically everyone just went, nah, and booted him out. And what's nice is, unlike in the UK or Canada where everyone's feeling is like, I guess we'll go with this stuffed shirt for a bit. Everyone's like, this is our guy. I think also Australia lost the voice, which was the Aboriginal people of Australia were going to be able to comment and give advice on laws affecting them, which is part of the Australian. They have a constitutional device that allows that. There was a plebiscite to give them that. It was lost because Peter Dutton sabotaged it. And what I think happened is everyone just went, okay, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Right.
And they just went, we are giving this a decisive Labour victory, and then we're going to make a decision in 4 years as to the direction of Australia.
I'm so glad I had you on. Did you live there for a time, or you've just toured?
I just toured, and you spend 3-4 months in a place.
Smoked a lot of weed with, comics.
I smoked a lot of weed with comics and then started picking up newspapers. It's just one of those things where some people like baseball and I like politics. And nothing gets more exciting than Australian politics, because up until the last guy, they could just vote to toss the guy out. So it's literally like, you know what? Jaywalking should be legal. We're getting a new prime minister, and it's just a new guy.
Yeah. Or a woman.
Or a woman, very much, of course, Julia Gillard. Oh, betrayed. There was the first female prime minister was like righteously betrayed by this nerdy guy, and there's certain people in Australia that you know how some people have never gotten over what happened to Bernie Sanders in 2016 or what happened to Bernie Sanders in 2020, and literally it's just sort of like it's that same vibe.
I see, the thing is, I really I love all of these developments because there's nothing clearer than the United States losing their exceptionalism, their hegemony, their influence than Australia and Canada, which are, I don't want to overstate the similarities, but they're they're sort of similar, and we're all three are definitely allies, one of the closest allies of the United States militarily. And Trump hasn't said, and this is very interesting, he hasn't said that much about Australia, because everyone's kind of looking like, because Canada, and please take it from here, but it's very clear that people were like, all right, we don't want dude who's going to be cozier with Trump than guy who's like, nah, Canada's not for sale. What are you talking about? Fuck all this noise. And I'm not speaking like Trump. But Australia didn't have Trump sort of being like, oh, it would be a shame if something happened to all those koalas. Like, there's not, there was no threat really. And it still went this way, which shows that it actually isn't just about the outward, aggression. Not to overstate the Trump effect, but the Trump effect isn't just about the outward aggression to Canada.
No, and I think also the difference between how Trump is speaking about the Canadian election and the Australian election, I think also comes down to the fact that Trump's influence is now divided. There was a period of time about a month ago where he was riding high. The tariffs hadn't taken effect. He wasn't looking at taking a third out of the import economy of the country he's supposed to be the leader of. You can lie all you want. That's going to start making people angry. And I think what has happened is, I think he thought maybe if I can sway the Canadian election, I'm going to get a free trade tariff agreement, something like that. And now they're just in full tilt spiral damage control. Also, how do I say this? I don't think Trump understands how trade works, so I don't think he understands why Australia would be an important ally.
No.
I don't think that gets restated, which is like when everyone was like, does he understand what he's doing with the tariffs? And it's like, no, it's the same think tank guys who were running the British Conservative Party have gotten a new gig in Washington. We just go look what they did in the UK. It's going to be that, but with like a hot dog.
What do you think about, Mark Carney, by the way, was visiting Donald Trump, and I want to play that clip in a moment, but I'm curious about, what this means, as we talked about the Canadian election and how it, was bad for the Greens, or bad for the NDP. Does trying to beat the US look more like becoming like a duopoly or like the United States? Obviously, both are different political systems, even voting systems. I would argue more democratic. I think a parliamentary system is far more democratic. But like, does it mean that the Labour Party in Australia or that, the Liberal Party in Canada change, like evolve? Or does it mean that they're like, no, we're just entrenched in our centrism?
I think it's such a great question. I think the Labour Party showed that they were able, in a better way than Mark Carney's Liberals, that they are trying to thread the needle of both being a party of the extreme center, to use that term from before, with sort of indicating they're going a bit more left wing than, say, Mark Carney's Liberal Party is literally just going, remember Barack Obama? I'm that, but I'm a banker. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, in part, like I've been saying this, God, I can't believe we're mentioning Obama multiple times, but I've been saying, with the Democrats so rudderless, and got Alyssa Slotkin, who's out here going like, we need to not be woke and weak, and like, what's our vision and what's our identity? It's like, you literally had the most popular politician of the country, possibly like the world, but like Obama still somehow is incredibly popular because he was like, yeah, it's a multiracial democracy where our best days are ahead of us. And end of story. Super neoliberal, needs more working class. It's like, do that, but with Bernie. Okay, you take Bernie, you take Barack, and you put them together, you dumb assholes. It's right in front of you. And so that's why I'm like, in terms of talking about Barack Obama, it's like, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all neoliberal. It was also like, as we have a literal white nationalist at the helm, it was about like, what is our multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious vision that actually is what the founding fathers talked about in, when they weren't doing all the slave stuff. Here is Mark Carney, though. Let's just go to it, dude, before... Unless you mean to jump in, but I don't want to take us too off.
Oh, no. All I was going to say is I totally agree with you. It's just the problem is that Barack Obama is the greatest lesson of you need to have experience as the president, because Barack Obama 2008 rules, and by 2009 he got smoked by Mitch McConnell and those Republicans, and he was scared for 7 years. And
he got smoked by the same status quo folks who surrounded him and dark money and the overturning of Citizens United.
Of course. But here's what I just want from the Democratic Party. Get me an Ed Koch guy who's just going to stand there and go, it's going to be tough for a while. And do you want to know why? Because the other side are a bunch of racist white supremacists who tried to kill people, and they had access to the tax money, and so it's gone. So it's going to be tough for 2 years. Fox News isn't going to like me. I don't fucking like, can we stop being so
I mean, Trump is like, it's going to be tough for a while on some shit that nobody voted for, which is tariffs. But here is Mark Carney visiting Trump as he said he would, and said that, Canada's not for sale. And he sort of sneaks it in here about it's not for sale. And see if you can, if people can catch Trump's response to this Canada's not for sale moment.
As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the president just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership. And I'll say this as well, that the president has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
That's true. And they have.
Okay, first of all, I love a couple things. Right off the bat, as you know, some places are not for sale, like where we are right now, the Oval Office, and it's like, oh, buddy. Oh, man. Yeah, no, the United States is very much for sale. Trump administration is super fire sale right now, okay? If you've got $1 million to give to spend at like a plate dinner at Mar-a-Lago, spend it. You'll get a kickback. You'll get a carve out. The richest man on earth is currently, although on his way out, so sad, of the White House. So it's just very funny that he was like, Mark Carney's like, it's not for some places are not for sale. And Trump has no idea what the fuck that means. And then when he says, and Canada is one of them, there's a little bit of a, we'll see.
It's interesting that no one picked up, and Fox News should have picked up on this because it's very funny, it is the leader of the country that burned the White House down, saying that building is never for sale. Like, that's the thing that I always think is very funny whenever a Canadian leader shows up and they're like, our great allies, the Canadians, come into this building that you burned down. During the War of 1812, Canada.
I was like, what?
You can't.
When?
1812, baby.
Canadians do arson? Wow.
Bro, it's the winter. How do you think you get warm? You know what I mean? That's why our cities are so small. It hits January. You can't pay your heating bill. Just set the sucker on fire. You know what I mean?
Don't tell Trump about this because he will. That'll be like, we're getting back at Canada for what they did.
I don't want to be a little Alex Jones here, but this is my conspiracy theory. I think Roberts someone from the Supreme Court has called Trump and when you're not getting, we made it so you didn't go to trial for January 6th, and that was the last gimme. Because in the last 3 days, he has been way more kind of sheepish flirty than his overt aggression with Zelensky. I was when I heard Mark Carney was going down, I'm like, we're going to get J.D. Vance in the sofa, and he's going to be like, why do you have French people up there, Mark?
Totally. No, but that's what's so crazy about, that's how I'm sorry, but Russian asset, because for me, it's the one time where he looks alive. It's the one time Trump actually gets really, really mad. It's the one time he cares and knows everything, or ostensibly, right, is when it's about Ukraine and Zelensky.
So do you think here's my question. Do you think he's actually a Russian asset? Or, this is what I think, he's so stupid that you just have to say something to him right before, and that's what he's doing for the next 10 minutes.
No, I don't think he's an asset. I do think he's a Manchurian candidate. I do think there's a lot of Russian money. I do think his first election was set up by it. And again, I say this full well knowing that was not the reason it should have been Hillary Clinton's election. But that does not change the amount of Russian money that has and does. And the only party platform point that they changed for the Republican Party was if Ukraine is invaded, we will not help Ukraine. That's what under a neoconservative Republican Party under Trump, that's what they decided to do, which is wild. And you hear, Carney's like, oh, we're very excited that you're going to, support NATO. But no, bitch, no, he's not. No, he's not.
Well, this is real inside baseball of Canadian politics. The reason why I had to say that is Justin Trudeau just flat out did not meet the Canadian NATO military spending obligation. Now, I'm not for military spending, but it's one of those things where Trump has them on that one little detail.
Right.
So what I think he's doing is like, I'm going to be different. I'm going to give you some of that money. But it's like, I don't know where the Canadian government thinks he's going to get that money. Like everyone's like, they've been talking about this for a while, but it's like the reason why Justin Trudeau didn't meet that obligation is in the same way where it's like, why didn't you pay your rent? Well, I don't have money for the rent. Well, can you get me the money? Well, no, that's why we don't have the money for the rent.
I see. So he's sitting there. I'm so glad that on a day when I'm out of it, that I have a very smart man on, and that is you, John Hastings. We have one more story to get to, and it's a good one, which is Donald Trump would like to reopen Alcatraz. He took to Truth Social over the weekend and said, rebuild and open Alcatraz for too long. Oh boy. And then a bunch of other bullshit. America's been plagued by the vicious, violent, and repeat criminal offenders. The dregs of society will never contribute anything other than misery and suffering. On and on and on. I'm directing the Bureau of Prisons together with the Department of Justice, FBI, and Homeland Security to reopen a substantially enlarged and rebuild. Because there's only so big you can build Alcatraz. It's a tiny fucking island, y'all. Will no longer be held hostages to criminals, thugs, and judges. Oh, it's going to be a judge prison, John. The reopening of Alcatraz will serve as a symbol of law and order, and justice will make America great again. So before I kick it to you, the question is why, where, when, how, who? Like, again, is he just sort of like a kid that just saw the movie The Rock or whatever and was like, oh, that's the cool thing I could think of? Or, and this is what I believe people on I think it's on Twitter, have discussed. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. They say, we think we know what happened. Last weekend, WLRN, a PBS affiliate that services South Florida, including Palm Beach and Mar-a-Lago, aired a rerun of Escape from Alcatraz, which is Clint Eastwood's 1979 classic about the prison's most famous breakout. In fact, it aired not once, but twice, Saturday night and then Sunday morning, just before Trump took to social media and floated his plan to turn the historic island back into a high-security fortress. White House declined to comment whether Trump's Alcatraz idea came from watching Escape from Alcatraz, which was airing twice in his where he was. But if true, we probably buried the lead here. This is according to the Reporter, which is that the president was watching a movie on a PBS channel, the very network he routinely slams as radical woke propaganda that they are defunding, in fact. So yes, that's exactly what happened, because he's an old, angry, racist man who watches classic movies and it's like, how come we can't do that again? And that's where it came from.
I didn't think that second part was real. I didn't like, I saw it on Twitter, but I just thought it was just my echo chamber just sounding off. Like, oh yeah, you have a Ukraine flag and a rainbow flag in your Threads bio. Yeah, of course you're going to just assume that. But I didn't realize they were like, no, we checked the, oh my God. It's just, I know that this is our reality, but are you guys not entertained? Like it is good stuff. Like it's bad that like I'm about to become a parent. You are a parent. We are handing a very broken world and democracy to our children. But like, look at them in the eyes and go, news used to be boring. They used to talk about the deficit. Now we're talking about Clint Eastwood during his funnest time.
I mean, it does. Again, I do feel like the aliens that sent Trump here or the time travelers, is this a way time travelers wouldn't go back and kill Trump. They use Trump as a lesson to teach Americans about if you don't protect and expand your democracy, how easily it can crumble. Like, that's what it feels like. And they're going to put it in the dumbest vessel possible.
it just feels like every generation gets their perfect avatar, and Trump is the perfect avatar for the baby boomer generation. No, for a baby boomer man. That's everything a baby boomer man stands for.
It's true, but we're all subjected to it. It's so funny. Like the Alcatraz thing, it's like again, it's like me as an 8-year-old, or like whenever I first visited Alcatraz and like buying the shirt and be like, oh, that's cool. Like people escape from here. And then like, you know, I hear they're bringing back Star Search, and it's like, oh, it's like watching Star Search and like watching Rambo movies, and just like everything is like blonde bangs and high cut bikinis, and why can't we just touch women without consent? Like everything is so fucking 80s, you know, it's so lifestyles of the rich and famous. And I'm like, even while I was living it as a child, I thought it was corny. I don't need to live it as an adult.
Yeah. I want us to do the fun 80s, you know what I mean? Like the talking heads, and everyone has bowl cuts, and we all have really good loft spaces in weird parts of LA that make no sense. Oh, it's $75, but it's next to where they make the methadone by the LA River. Like that's what I want, those 80s.
Yes.
Yeah, not Gordon Gekko greed is good 80s. Can just one man understand a satirical film? That's what I would like. I would like one man not to take away from a movie that is satirizing evil and go, that guy who went to jail at the end, he was my hero.
Well, they're not the empire, they're the resistance. Okay, John. And as per the White House's May 4th AI tweet, just in case you don't know, may the 4th be with you, and the Trump administration is the resistance, and you're the empire, trans.
First of all, and this was pointed out, shout out to my friend George, who literally took to our giant old school way too many friends WhatsApp group to point out in that tweet, only Trump would say I'm a good guy with a red lightsaber, when we all know that is the color of the Sith. Good guys have blue or green.
I know,
lightsabers.
all the nerds were like,
oh. It was amazing. It was just like literally just like, guys, you know, it's weirder that the president did this. Well, I believe you should probably be reading more fantasy and science fiction if this guy continues to be in charge, my friend. And you're like, all right, well, that's a weird thing to take away from this.
The other thing before I let you go, the other facet of this is reinvigorating Hollywood, obviously, you know, getting back to the Clint Eastwood bangers like Escape from Alcatraz. It is about asking people who know how to bring back the industry to Los Angeles. By the way, there's a 22% drop in the number of productions that are happening in LA. It's really rough out there. And the man's name is John Voight, and he is here. Once again, speaking of boomers, he's here. He just met with the president, who, yes, once again, is Donald Trump. If you're just waking up from that sweet, sweet coma, go back to sleep. Here he is talking about how they're going to reinvigorate Hollywood.
My fellow Americans and my peers of...
First of all, I love when someone starts with my fellow Americans, and they're like, who the fuck are you? Like you are not elected, my guy. Anyway.
Hollywood. I recently met with our president, Donald J. Trump, who loves the entertainment business, wants to see Hollywood thrive and make films bigger and greater than ever before, as he says, and see productions come back to American Hollywood. The Hollywood that I fell in love with when I was a child and was honored to contribute to during my career. Our industry recently has suffered greatly over these past few years.
We know. Private
many
equity.
Americans have lost jobs to productions
Streaming.
that have gone overseas. It's been very serious. People
just the reboot.
People have lost their homes.
Fucking industry.
Can't feed their families.
Fires.
After meeting with many of the entertainment leaders, I have brought forward recommendations to the president for certain tax provisions that can help the industry. Some provisions that could be extended and others that could be revived or instituted. This would help.
Okay, so tax provisions, let's stop him right there.
Every liquid in my body is boiling. Can we stop for 1 second in stupid LA when it comes to show business, blaming everything on the 2 or 3 additional taxes that stupid Gavin Newsom has put in, and maybe look at the fact that there was a strike and the Writers Guild and SAG, using all of the information they had at the time, built in all of these protections for AI, and these companies knew better and knew that that technology was not nearly the threat that they were positioning it as, and they gave away more than they should, allowing productions to be shipped overseas. And that's the actual problem. And can we stop thinking it's, oh, we need to cut 2 taxes? These are companies. It's going to equate for like 1 less percent, like that's not the issue.
No. And it reminds me of the Palisades stuff. This is a longer conversation, but just we're rebuilding at rapid pace and we've skirted every environmental protection and every law. And you're like, I'm pretty sure that's why we were in the situation to begin with.
Oh, no, Francesca, no, we now have 2 sweet greens accessible from the 405 in the Palisades. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. You're welcome, Santa Ana winds, as you fucking blow through. You can light both sweet greens on fire. And the same thing, again, the private, even before the strikes, obviously it is the private equity, it is the tech infiltration into Hollywood, the consolidation, the same shit that happens in every other industry, the same shit that killed Toys R Us happened to movies and television. But okay, so tax schemes are, get this, John, on 100% tariff, according to Donald Trump, on any and all movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. Which this is just, we want movies made in America again. I do.
He's declared war on movies with subtitles.
I feel like, no, exactly. First of all, this is for all the conservative boomers, this is an affront to all of the liberal boomers. My mom, which I constantly talk about, is like, okay, we're going to defund PBS and NPR. We're going to fuck over all the national parks that you love and you enjoy and you take your brisk walks through, and then we're going to get rid of any art house cinema, foreign film, and make that ticket $55. This is just so terrible.
It's also just imagine, because you know that Trump is made uncomfortable by John Voight. John Voight literally looks like a sleeping bag full of soup, and there is no way that breath is fresh. There is that he seems like a close talker with some halitosis, and it's just
a sleeping bag full of soup. When you said sleeping bag, I didn't imagine a sleeping bag. I imagined a sleeping bag full of soup.
That's right.
Oh, there's a bag of soup, but it's asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Finally someone gets me. Yeah, no, it's crazy. I legitimately think that it's just the people that were famous when Trump was 20. That's who gets that's who gets to be in round 2. It's if I was Trump, and the people that were cool when I was 20, so it would be Terry Richards and, oh God, the people that were cool when I was 20 was terrible. It's Gavin McInnes, all the guys from Vice. I was just thinking that. The millennial version of Trump is going to have some weird people next to him, because at least it's oh, John Voight, he was cool in a way.
In my dictatorship, I'm going to be Destiny's Child is getting back to fucking together.
Yeah,
right now.
Do it right this time. Kelly Rowland has the center stage. To the side, Beyonce.
John Hastings, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you, follow your work, see you live?
Please find me on any social media with @TheJohnHastings. It's @TheJohnHastings on all fine social medias, and even my website is thejohnhastings.com. Go to any of those places, and thank you so much. Watch my specials, please.
YouTube.com, John Hastings?
YouTube.com /@the John Hastings.
That.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, though, John Hastings. You're wonderful. Come back again soon. Thank you all for being here, too. Let me read a couple of comments before I bring in. No, I'm gonna save these. I'm going to save these, but I just wanted to let you know that your next guest was a special request from a patron. Really, really excited to have her on. She's a co-founder of The Financial Diet on YouTube, the #1 destination for women to talk about money, author of many, many books, including The High Dive, which is coming out on May 27th. Please welcome Chelsea Fagan.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I when the tariffs were first announced, I immediately, and I saw someone suggest your channel, I immediately went to your channel and was like, tell me what to do.
Yeah,
I'm freaking
real.
out. And I feel like I'm digging it because, and I think, you know, as you have many awesome deep dives on your channel, you are also talking about, look, it's not left versus right. It's the haves and have-nots. It's the 1% versus the 99%, if you will, always and forever. And so your financial analysis and advice always does come with this power analysis that I think we can never forget and is so in our faces right now. As you know, I like, you know, 3 a.m, you do the, you know, sort of anxious thoughts. My anxious thoughts often are like, we've really not felt the worst, and we've just begun to feel the impact of Trump's tariffs and the rollback and the not and the this and the that. Those are my fearful thoughts. This is from the New York Times. Trump's tariffs, they're tracking them. There are planned tariffs in gray. There are tariffs in effect in purple, partly in effect. And if you are listening, it's Mexico and Canada. Most of them are in effect. Half of them are in effect. Only a few have been paused. You know, China, all in effect in terms of aluminum, steel, kind of in relation to actually what we were just talking about. A lot of people who are trying to rebuild their homes that were burned down in the LA fires are like, can you not tax these things that we'll need to rebuild businesses, homes, whatnot? And, you know, that's not a carve out. But this is a long wheeling way of bringing you in and saying, how do you make, I don't need you to make sense of it, but yeah, like where do you think we're at as a country in terms of feeling these effects of this scattershot approach to an economy?
Yeah, I mean, you can't make sense of it, so I wouldn't try. I think that's not good for mental health, and I think that part of the reason why people feel so fatigued is because just keeping up with the day-to-day sort of machinations and trying to figure out what the next steps will be are basically impossible tasks. So adding that on to the actual practical realities of managing your money and planning for this, you know, it's not good. Most human brains aren't equipped to handle it. As far as what's, you know, going to come, so one thing that I think it's very important for people to understand is that this approach with tariffs is deeply unpopular and divisive amongst the right wing in America. There are, just like there are many, many issues now that the right is really fractured on, right? Like, for example, there's half of the right in America that's agitating for war with Iran, and then there's half of the right that is as starkly anti-interventionist as many people on the left. And that is a battle that is playing out in real time in right-wing media and amongst politicians. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys saw Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out on, you know, on Twitter with a whole crazy rant, but included in that, it started off with no war with Iran,
Right.
and you know, no legislation backing BDS or outlawing BDS federally and all of that. So just like there is an enormous amount of disagreement on the right in terms of foreign policy, there is an enormous amount of disagreement in terms of economic protectionism. It's important to remember that tariffs, and specifically these tariffs that are aimed to protect the American economy and restore manufacturing and do all these things, by the way, none of which these are going to accomplish. Like, let's be very clear about that. Historically, that's actually a very left-wing economic policy. And if you look in the 80s and 90s, the most sort of aggressive political agitators for these tariffs and specifically against free trade were on the left. Now, lately, there has been an increased sort of wave of economic protectionism and populism on the right. But it's important to remember that the vast majority of Republicans are still neoconservatives, and they're still economically quite neoliberal. So they are more for free trade than anyone. They're more for offshoring than anyone. So I actually think from a political perspective, the reason that even compared to many other things that are going to play out right now and that have played out, this is really impossible to predict is because it is such an unpopular and divisive battle, even within Trump's base and even within, the right wing as a
His
political
mega
group.
donors, his
Mega
billionaires.
donors. Exactly. It's also important to remember that Apple, for example, represents about 6% of the S&P 500. So the amount of power that a company like Apple has, the amount of influence that it has over not just the average American's portfolio, but specifically as we talk about the capital and owning class, the amount of power that they wield is in many ways stronger than many governments. So this is also a battle that's going to play out as much between corporations and governments as it will between governments. All of that is to say, I would not want to be in the business of importing toys from China right now. I would not want to be in the business of being a drop shipper. Now, I do want to be clear that there are a few industries that are likely to get torched by this that I think deserve to be torched, such as drop shipping. And, I definitely think we certainly need some level of a reset with regards to the level that consumerism has reached, especially when you look at things like Temu, Shein, these companies that are incredibly destructive for the planet. But as far as
I
how
love
they
that
will,
I always sort of make fun of it because, speaking of like, the left being critics of, globalized economy, like that was me back in the day. And it's like, we were all like, what about labor rights and environmental rights and consumerism is death and all this crap, and that's sort of like, we lost that battle. And now we've built our entire economy around being a consumerist and a service economy mostly, but very consumerist driven. And now Trump's like, you're only going to have $2, but they'll be both more expensive. And you're like, oh, cool. Great. So we don't get any of the perks. What are we doing here? And I also just think it's so funny that like some capitalists threw down with Trump over Biden because like Biden was maybe going to make them pay more of a corporate tax and antitrust stuff, the Trump administration still ironically pursuing some of that. But it's like, cool. Now you got a dumbass who's like doing, random tariffs here and there. But please continue.
No, absolutely. But I think also, as it pertains to the sort of day-to-day economics of it and how people can prepare. Again, if you are a business that is already being affected or likely to be drastically affected, I'm a small business owner. When the pandemic hit, we were in the middle of an in-person event series, and in-person events were a huge part of our business model. So I absolutely understand the pain that having circumstances outside of your control completely upend your business overnight. And there's really nothing comforting to say because we don't know. And the truth is it's probably going to get a lot better before it gets worse, especially as it pertains to some of these imports from China. That being
worse
said,
before it gets better.
That's what I meant. Exactly. But in terms of if you're a consumer who is not personally affected in terms of their own business or how they make a living, and you're more thinking of it in terms of, buying things at the grocery store or Walmart, whatever the case may be. Don't panic buy. That's the worst thing you can possibly do, because you don't know what things are going to be affected more than others. And that's just a really poor decision-making, especially with, the other economic factors that are likely to enter the conversation in the next year or two. But I will say from a purely political perspective, especially as it pertains to, the midterms, and I know there are some people who are like, we're not even going to have midterms. I disagree with that functionally, but I also think like, even if that were the case, don't admit defeat before that happens. Like,
of course,
act as if we're going to have midterms.
Yeah.
And if this really does take the kind of wrecking ball to the consumer economy that many economists think that it will, in the long term, or at least the medium term, it's probably a good thing for Democrats.
Yeah. In terms of being able to sort of politically clean up after it. Yeah. No, that's very real. I mean, there's so much. I'm so grateful to have you on, and there's so many questions I have, because I think for people who are invested at all in the stock market, this is like, I lived in Argentina for many years. I always have to talk about it, but the reality of the 2001 economic crash there is just like, it's always persistent. The US is not Argentina as much as Elon Musk wants to make it Argentina somehow. The dollar is strong. The peso is not, blah, 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 blah. But like there was a moment where it was like, oops, gotta freeze everyone's bank account. And now when we unfreeze it, it's going to be worth a third of it of what it was. People don't trust banks there. They store money in their, in their mattresses. Like it is a very cash heavy economy because of it. There's just so many things that like kind of living and feeding and sort of feeling that like secondhand. I'm very much like, tell me when I have to take all the money out and just like bury it, and maybe I should sell everything. Like what that whole thing is like, do these people give a fuck enough about everyday Americans to not let it crash completely? That's that's the thing that's been percolating for me.
I don't think so. I think one of the things, as it pertains to economics, I think one of the things that is, there's a tendency to think in terms of a they. And it's so important to remember that even within the Trump administration, there is no such thing as a they. They do not agree. People are getting fired on a daily basis. They are completely at odds with each other. And we've already seen many of the most vocal voices in Congress on the right already start to defect on a lot of these issues. So I think it's important to remember that there is not any one sort of Machiavellian, overarching group of people who are all enacting this plan together. There is Trump's brain, which I think was addled to begin with, and I think has precipitously declined. Fun fact about me is that I was in the Trump jury pool, so I've actually been in the room with Trump. Yeah, craziest 4 days of my life, I will say. But I've been in a room with that man.
They were like, a woman who knows finance? No thanks, bye. Like, cool.
True. But let me tell you, sitting across from him in a courtroom for several days, that man was barely awake. So I don't actually feel like, I don't feel a strong sense of him having a master plan in that regard. I think he has certain things that have been obsessions for him, such as tariffs, which he was famously obsessed with all the way back in the 70s and 80s. So I think the important thing to understand is, are there some people who would care about, the working and middle classes taking a bath along the lines of an 2008 recession? Probably there are enough people who would be willing to take that quote unquote short-term hit for longer term entrenchment of capital and power, maybe. Is that all of them? Probably not. And more importantly, even amongst the people who truly don't care what happens to, I would say 90% of Americans, they don't agree on the methods, nor do they agree on the goals. And again, when you talk about things like radical economic protectionism, you must remember that, again, 80+% of not even just Republicans, but Republican donors specifically are incredibly against this. And if the goal, because some people I think who are quite catastrophist about this, they'll say things like, well, the goal is to completely crash the economy to instate a military dictatorship. Please be very clear that if that were the goal, there are many ways to go about that don't also massively F up the portfolios of, the top 10 richest percent, not just in our country, but in the world.
Sure.
And there are just a lot cleaner and more economically efficient ways.
My question, and this is the last on that, because I have a couple other unrelated to tariffs, but I think that I've been saying something like destitution is the point. I wonder what your take on that is in terms of driving people to be more fearful about unionizing, to accept any job, that the sort of, I had Richard Wolff on during the pandemic, and he, was talking about kind of like, or maybe it was Doug Henwood, one of the two, but both of them were basically like, look, some of the, money that people had in their pockets, from the stimulus and the, like American Rescue Plan and whatnot, it was a little bit of like a fuck you money, a little bit of fuck you money to be like, I'm not going to just take any job. You're going to have to pay $20 an hour for me to work at Jack in the Box. And that's totally fine and fair, or more. That they're all trying to kind of put that back in the bag of the whole essential worker thing, the whole, you've got rights thing. That maybe, yes, that destitution and desperation is the end goal. What's your take on that?
Maybe for a few people, but I actually don't think that the true believers, again, I think Trump is on a sharp mental decline in different ways than Biden, but similarly. I think that there are people who are outright. I think that there are two kinds of people, in broadly speaking, on the right. There are people who are pretty ruthless about corporate power and capital entrenchment, and I think those are probably the people who are closer to, the truest form of authoritarianism. Especially as it pertains to things like economics. Like they would truly, if they could, create a situation where people are essentially in indentured servitude, feudalism, basically. Right. I think there are certainly people like that. I think, though, that there are many people on the right who are, I think that they are to some extent economically populist, but I think that they're also largely racist and homophobic and a lot of other things. So they actually probably would be supportive of a lot of, pro-labor and economically favorable to the working and middle class policies, insofar as they pertained to white people and specifically white hetero married with children people.
Yep.
And I think they're pretty clear about that. But I actually don't think, I understand the desire to think of these people, whether it's a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a JD Vance or whoever these people are, to think of them as kind of ontologically evil. I actually think that that's not only probably not true. I think it's not productive, because you then don't understand, because, like, for example, to go back to the foreign policy question, like, there is a very real chance that the people who want to agitate for war with Iran or who want to put boots on the ground in Gaza will be able to win out. And at some level, you will need to work with people on both sides of the aisle who oppose that kind of thing. So I do think that to think in such binary thinking of, like, there is a shadowy cabal of people who want Americans to be as destitute as possible is oversimplified, and I think ultimately will probably make the political solutions harder.
I accept that. I am someone who thinks that those differences should be exploited without having to work with a Marjorie Greene. Like, I think I'm not in Congress. If I were in Congress and I wanted to, co-sponsor a bill for no war in Iran, I think that's a perfectly legitimate stance to take. From the outside, I'm much more like, nah, I'm going to exploit the fissures, but, like, I would never fucking work with, like, that MAGA base because of, the racism and such. But let's move on to the, like, the other, like, some other stuff. Just I guess the other question, and we sort of I think young people, I think millennials and Gen Z are really flip about their economic prospects for the future. I think everyone's very black-pilled about owning a home, about, having stability, we all know we're not going to make more money than our parents did. And I don't think there's a lot of, like, light at the end of the tunnel. We can't even get Medicare for all, things that would sort of alleviate our everyday, worries. I guess I just want to, like, this is not really, I don't know if there's a question, but maybe as I was talking with Paige, she was saying, a lot of this also has to do with, like, renters, like people who are, like, forever renters, and there's so many young voters who are just renters. And yet so much of our politics are sort of geared toward homeowners and people with more money and stability and, like, all that. Anyway, I guess the question is, like, how is the I don't know what the question is, Chelsea. I'm just sort of, like, naming that. Feels like it's so everything is so sort of, like, dark and grim for young folks right now. And the other part of it is this hustle culture that young people are being told to also buy into. The only way out is to either invest in crypto or be a content creator, go viral. It's all this, like, kind of, like, supposedly easy money, although you and I know it's not. So like, what's the net? What happens? Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe not to play, like, crystal, like, that you have a crystal ball, but, like, why are we here, and what's the way kind of out of this thinking around hustle culture and around this sort of, like, nihilism around the economy?
Yeah. I mean, so a couple things. First of all, to answer your point about, like, you wouldn't work with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you don't have to, right? Your job is to speak on a show and to talk about these things. But eventually for things like not invading Iran, Bernie Sanders might need to,
Yeah,
that's just sort
exactly.
of the reality.
No, that's what I was trying to
Um,
say is I think if you're a politician, it does make sense.
So, but I do think kind of more broadly, to take it back to economic issues, I think that there was a sense after 2016 that anyone who voted for Trump for any reason was sort of forever excluded from the civil life and the public conversation. And these are people we will never work with, we will never, sort of break bread with, or could never find common ground with. In 2024, he won the popular vote, and he won an incredibly, by Republican standards, to be clear, a quite diverse coalition. He won quite a number of young people, which to me, I think it's, again, to take it back to this sort of perception of people as being ontologically evil. I think it's a pretty sort of politically dead end theory to think that now the majority of voting Americans are irredeemably evil and are making these decisions for purely sort of hate driven reasons.
Sure.
I think that what you're pointing to economically, like, it is very clear that for millennials and Gen Z, they are doing worse than their parents on so many metrics. Wages have been stagnant for decades. The cost of living has exploded. People can't afford homes. They can't afford education. You can trace quite a lot of this back to Ronald Reagan. And I think that Trump is evil in some ways, but like bar for bar, I actually think Reagan still has a worse record.
Yeah.
He was just more, appealing, and he spoke in a more sort of quote unquote civilized or diplomatic way. But the damage that he wrought was, I would argue, still to this day, much more far reaching and destructive. But the reality is, when you have an economy where very few people have a real chance at building wealth and stability in the way that historically they were able to, because lest we forget, the ideal used to be that one salary without a college education supported a family of four, and that included buying a home, that included education, that included all of those things. With the fewer and fewer people, young and otherwise, who are able to do that, the more and more appealing both these get rich quick schemes and far right politics with a sort of fake economic populist message are going to be. Look at history. Look at other countries. This is not surprising. You named Argentina. Like, that is a pretty good example of moving toward a faux economic populism to answer very, very real economic struggles. And you combine that with people who are being very intentionally uneducated, very intentionally disenfranchised in the voting process, who many of whom can't even get time off of work to vote, even though that is supposed to be a right. I say all of this to say, I think that as we understand the appeal of far-right politics, and as we understand especially the many different pathways that voters are now taking to get to this political agenda, we must understand that while it does not explain everything, and it certainly doesn't excuse the bigotry and the hatred that is inherent to a lot of these politics, we cannot, like, Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in America for a reason. And it's because he says that ultimately the economic suffering of the majority of people, especially young people, is going to continue to push towards these politics and to push towards these get rich quick schemes. So the answer of where do we go from here is, until the democratic sort of institutions are willing to actually support a working class driven politics, it is only going to get worse on every front.
No, yeah. And I realize that I've made you speak very macro, when I think what's so great about what you also do is giving people the tools to day kind of understand, their own, economic health, financial health, and just like what they can do. Are there any tips before, don't panic buy, which is the opposite of what I was like, if you got a big purchase, maybe make it. That's what I was saying last year. But also, again, I don't study this. And, but is there any tips or things you think people should keep in mind, to sort of weather this Trumpian storm until, again, we can do the revolution.
I think the most important thing to remember that a recession is just a collection of macroeconomic indicators, and it doesn't really matter whether or not we are quote unquote technically in a recession. By some metrics, we sort of already are. By some metrics, we are likely to be. And it's also important to remember that irrespective of Trump, recessions typically happen on a pretty predictable cyclical basis. So at some point, we will be in another one. But it is important to remember that some people have already been in a personal recession for quite some time. Some people were in a personal recession under Biden. And so all of, the DNC coming out and pointing to a bunch of charts that say things have never been better doesn't resonate if that's not the case for you. The most important thing to do is to remember that ultimately, I would say three things. One, if you are in a very precarious position, in terms of employment. So for example, maybe you are just starting your career, or maybe you work for the federal government, or you have reason to suspect that there is a fluctuation with your job. Do everything you can to bring in an additional source of income right now. Try to, or at least prepare yourself, essentially be ready to be in job search mode if that is necessary. I would not overly, if you are regularly doing something like contributing to a 401k or saving for retirement, which if you can, you ideally should be, I would highly, highly, highly discourage you from stopping that and stockpiling cash, which is what a lot of people want to do. Generally speaking, the entire point of investing in the market is to do so in a consistent long-term way, regardless of market indicators.
Right.
And that is going to depend on investing when the market is down, and even very down. It's important to remember, as far as it pertains to recessions too, that a lot of people get very rich during recessions because they are able to buy up a lot of things, be they equities or bonds or actual real estate or whatever the case may be. So don't suddenly panic and abandon your investing strategy if you have one. And then third, try to consume economic news in a way that is productive, but not overly catastrophizing. I personally listen to the Financial Times news briefing every single morning. It is incredibly neutral and incredibly I would say almost comically detached from the political or human rights implications of anything they're talking about. But they are very good for day-to-day economic news.
Yeah, we were just clowning on a headline though from the Financial Times of Elon Musk's painful departure, but that is good to know that I was just like that the Financial Times like stick to what you do good. Not just talking about how Elon's so sad he has to leave. Chelsea Fagan, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for taking the time. You crank out the content, you do a lot. You've got your finger on the pulse. Where can people find you, listen to you, watch you?
The Financial Diet, everywhere you go online.
Great. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to devour more episodes. Everybody should be subscribed. Check it out. Again, kind of helped me. I was like, oh, what are we doing? She's great and clearly got a sober assessment of everything. Let's read some comments and get the hell out of here. It's been a great show. Loved having Chelsea and John on. Oh shoot, Gregory, I missed your comment. Please ask about requiring banks to maintain pass-through digital dollar wallets for individuals and or everyone, including businesses. Good idea. That seems like it'll be. I know she'll have thoughts on that. And we didn't even really talk about crypto that much either, because of course, if we are now suddenly in a crypto reserve regime, how does that change everything? But B, sending some love to Chelsea. I love this crossover TV episode. Dave L says, I've got enough laundry soap for this entire administration. Someone's been going to Costco. Thank you, Doug, for that super sticker. Appreciate you. Let's see. The instructor says the Fox Propaganda Network and Republicans are going to drool when the Trump bills the taxpayers for his military birthday parade. His military birthday parade. It's coming. Live coverage, y'all. Live coverage. Speaking of Marjorie Greene, Donaz Dogmastodos. Donaz Dogmatastos. I don't know if I pronounced your name right. It says, TYT is having Marjorie Greene on tonight. Not a joke. Yeah, interestingly, they do tend to platform right-wingers. They have when they visit the RNC. I don't think they do a good job of pushing back. I think it's okay. I'm imagining they're platforming her over her thoughts on Iran, and trying to get to that real populist in her. Look, they're not in office. They're not working on any concrete bills. There are many, many people to platform who are actually working against war and genocide and against military funding. Platform U.S. campaign on Palestine, for starters. I would not go about platforming Marjorie Greene. I would say let them fight. Let them do it. Let their own base. We're not Marjorie's base. Let their own base try to tame them. But, if they do have her on, we'll see. We'll see what kind of pushback there actually is. There's a discussion about Israel. If we can point out those ironies and hypocrisies, and yet Marjorie Greene is like a hop, skip, and a jump away from Candace Owens when it comes to being against Israel for other reasons, and the reasons that we constantly say are not the reasons that people want genocide to stop are against it. Adrian Rutledge, Chelsea, our financial hero, plus she keeps it 100. Thank you for having her. No, thank you, and thanks for the super chat. Look, I know times are tough, but I really encourage everyone to keep on supporting this show. Keep on supporting live comedy. Become a patron, patreon.com/bitchuationroom. You can do $2 a month, $3 a month, the price of a coffee, depending on where you live. Or you can become a member like Saroon of Roundhead. I'm going to give you a shout out in a little bit. Thank you so much, Linda Martinson, also for your super chat. Rapping Facts, this is what I think. That he's preparing Alcatraz for himself when he eventually goes to jail. Yeah, he's like, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be gold. Like, he knows. He's like, just send me there early. Robert, who's watching my cat? My neighbors are watching my cat. She's good, I hope. I've upped her food regimen because she's like revenge eating for the one day she couldn't eat because she was under surgery. And yeah, Donald James also telling me Marjorie Greene is going to be a guest. Ugh. Benjamin Morrill, thanks for the super chat. Goddamn, I needed that bitch session. I hurt inside. 20 months of absolute horror. Hard to find any joy, let alone work ethic, knowing my fellow humans each day around me could care less. I mean, there's moments where you're in the middle of the night where you're like, panic thoughts. And some of those panic thoughts really have, it's either, oh my God, the economy, or oh my God, Gaza. It's pretty much the two that I go back and forth, or oh my God, my child is awake. And with that, guys, let us start the fart song and thank all these new members and the patrons at $10 or more. Ahí vamos. Hey, Angry Bob. Remember, you guys get access to all the bonus episodes every single Wednesday except for tomorrow. Donald James also said, people are demanding a national tour. I hear everyone's asking, when is Francesca coming to my state? There's going to be a red state. There's going to be a red state very soon. And then another state on the West Coast. TBD. Thank you so much, Bark Eater, for cheering those bits. Mumbles459 on Twitch subscribing. J-Tide subscribing. Late Bloomer also resubscribed. Andrek Suga, thanks so much. But really, this shout out goes to Moi Mobe for becoming a patron. To Tracy Ava, thank you so much for upgrading. And no new paid Substack members, but that's okay. FrannyFio.substack.com is where you go to support me, support the show, support Paige Olmec, Brent Godin, who is crushing it, Andy Vasoyan, who is crushing it. Paige is also crushing it. I just thought that went without saying. We're streaming Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, except for tomorrow and Friday because Mama need a break. But until next Tuesday, remember to fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, free Palestine, and don't just bitch about it. Be about it. Bye.